Hello, snowboarders of the internet. I'm your host Kevin, here with another Angry Snowboarder review, and today I'm going to be talking about the Flow Fuse Hybrid. I rode these on my Rome Ravine in a 158 with my DC Tuckneys in a size 8. Rode it at Breck, kind of late winter, early spring-ish, kind of right in that bridge season, so still some decent snow here and there. The groomers were super good, just kind of your average conditions. It hadn't snowed super recently, but the snow was still really good out there. Average temps, so like high 20s, low 30s, kind of your average bridge between winter and spring. So the adjustability on flows is going to be definitely a lot different than your traditional binding, and a lot of that has to come down to the fact that you're going to get into the binding by dropping the highback. So when you're doing that, that means that you don't have to tighten down your ratchets with the straps. Now, more or less, every time you get into a traditional binding and you're ratcheting down, you're readjusting the binding every time you get into it. And since you're not touching those ratchets and the strap's not changing when you lift the highback back up, these have to be dialed. So the hybrid strap is a little bit more complicated than the Fusion strap, and that's because it's got this extra third big toe strap, basically. But it's all on cams, so it's not hard to get adjusted. You just flip these up, you get things adjusted. My best recommendation for people that get into these is start from the back of the binding and move forward. So get your forward lean adjusted appropriately. Flows tend to work best if this highback sits flush to your boot. Once that's adjusted, keep both of your cams loose down on the front of your toe, center and tighten the ankle strap. So ankle strap, move down to your toe strap, skip this middle strap for a second, get this adjusted to where you need it to be, and then finally just snug up this kind of extra strap here. Really what that does is it'll just allows this to work like a flow's supposed to and keeps the ankle strap from being able to move up and down as you're getting into it. That's part of what makes flows better than pretty much any of the other rear entry bindings out there. So do that order: highback, ankle strap, toe strap, medial strap, and you're gonna have a really good chance of having these things adjusted appropriately on your first run out there. You're not going to have to make a ton of adjustments outside of that. With the ratchets, make note that these guys do lock. So your release levers, you can pop them up, ratchet them down. Once you got them where you like them, you can click that down, and that's going to keep this strap from sinking down further on the ladder when you drop your board down or anything like that. If you really push on it, you're going to get it to sink a little further, but lock that. It's going to keep that in the adjustment where you want it. Your forward lean adjustment, there is a little spin dial just above or just below the cable that sits in the highback lever. Spin that one direction or the other. There's little indicators on there, and that's going to move that plunger up and down and essentially create more tension on the cable. More tension on the cable, more forward lean. And lastly, you have your heel cup adjustment. So you have bolts right on the frame, just at your heels on either side. You're going to loosen those up, push it in. It's going to pop the grommet out on the back side. Don't loosen it all the way out that they come apart. You just got to get it loose that it pops out far enough. Slide that heel cup wing forward or back as needed. Pop it back in, tighten it back down. That's your adjustability. So the straps on these guys are pretty key, and with the hybrid strap style, there's definitely a little bit more to talk about, especially compared to the Fusion style. So to start off, you got your ankle strap. It has a little bit more beef to it, basically, compared to some of the lower end models. It's really cushy though. It's got gel, I believe, in it, and it provides a really comfortable feel. It's really smooth riding. One of the key things to know with flows, and this is the case with every single flow regardless of strap style, is do not over tighten your straps. It's going to make it harder to get into the binding, and part of the way a flow works is you have more strap on top of your boot, so you don't have to feel your straps on top of your foot like you would with a traditional 2 binding, or at least not nearly as much. So keep that in mind, and the strap does a really good job of distributing that pressure. Toe cap works pretty well as a toe cap. It is one solid piece right here as far as your adjusters are concerned, so depending on your boot shape, you can maybe have a little bit of a difficulty having it be perfect every single time you get into the binding without having to move it. I don't have that luxury, but you slide in, it takes 2 seconds to pull this up a little bit, and then I'm done. So nothing that really bothered me, but just know that you might have to move this a little bit every time you get into it. And then you have this cross brace, and that honestly provides a ton of the actual power to the binding when you're moving back into it. So your toe strap really just needs to keep things tight, and more just for the outside as you're driving and moving around on top of the board. All of your power as you're lifting up onto your heels really can come out of that extra middle strap right there. So that's actually one of my favorite pieces about this hybrid style strap is this extra piece right here. It does a really good job of just wrapping the boot, and it just feels really nice and just feels really secure, and honestly provides a good amount of power to it. Ratchets on flow bindings. For the most part, you're not really supposed to use them. They are there, and the hybrid strap style is definitely the one that is the most dual entry binding out of their line, and is probably the only true dual entry binding really out there, in my opinion, because you can get into it with your quick drop down high back, and because of the style of the hybrid strap, the fact that your toe strap is separated from the rest of it, you can actually get in and out of this as if it was a two-strap binding. I still ride the Freeballer, which does not have a high back to it. It just has a heel strap, basically. It's a toe strap on the back of the binding. So I don't have a high back to drop down. So I use it as a two-strap binding, and it has hybrid straps on it. So they do work like a traditional binding if you really need it to, which provides a massive benefit if you're riding free ride terrain where you get stuck in a position where you need to get out and you're on your heels. Well, you can't really get your high back down. Luckily, you can just pull out. And that's the nice thing about flows is if you get stuck on your toes, you can still get out and not have to be all sketchy. You can just pull your foot out and then toe jam into the wall. So, safety feature right there for you. Other than that, ratchets, they've got their lock mechanism to them. They're not the smoothest. Yeah, it's flow ratchets. They're barely meant to be used for the most part. So, the more you use them, the less that lock is going to be firm and really lock down on you. So if you're constantly using these as a two-strap, you're probably going to lose a little bit of that locking feature. Just be aware of that. It's just not meant to be used like a regular ratchet, so they don't build it like that. Other than that, they do work. I've never really had an issue. I've never gotten stuck in them. They've never blown off on me. So they work just fine, but just know that they are a little bit more secondary to the drop-down high back. The high back on this is actually new since the last time I rode fuses. I was actually around helping Flow with R&D back in the day when they introduced the fuse, and back then it was a two-piece high back. So you had your heel cup and your upper kind of lower portion, and then your upper chip that sat on that was bolted to it and provide a couple different flexes in their line, and that's the past. This one is a lot simpler. It is one solid piece, and honestly I think it provides a much better fit. It's also lighter weight. There's less stuff to go wrong. If you slammed on top of that old system, that top panel could just pop out of the rest of it. So I really like this new high back. It's a very similar flex to it. It still has a little bit of give up top, not a ton, still much more of a responsive, kind of stiffer binding to it. But yeah, just kind of your overall average feeling binding, generally speaking, and this goes with pretty much all flows, is that high back is going to feel a little bit more stiff and a little bit more supportive compared to a lot of the other stuff in the industry, and that's just kind of the nature of just the way it has to work. The fact that this is all one piece down here, all the way down your boot, and then that cable that runs through basically the top of that high back, and that's where all your stiffness is coming from. So there's not a lot of room up here to provide any amount of flex. So just be aware of that this is probably going to feel a little bit stiffer than even a traditional high back that even feels like this if you're playing around with it in the store, and that's just the nature of that cable running to the very top of it. Out of the active strap series that Flow does, and that's the series where when you kick the high back down, strap pops up and forward, this is the softer version, and this is the softest of all of the softer versions. So there's a couple different versions of fuse, and this is going to be the most movable version of that. It has the nylon frame, it does have the aluminum wings to it, so your lateral response is definitely a little bit higher, and then full nylon high back from top all the way through the heel cup. It does have the cable that runs through the top of the high back down into the frame. That's with every Flow out there, and that does provide a stiffer feel to it, especially rocking back and forth, because instead of having that energy transfer from high back to heel cup to frame, it goes high back through the cable directly into the frame, so it skips the whole path back here in the heel cup. So stiffness overall, the straps are relatively stiff. They have to be in order to hold their shape, and then the slightly softer frame, it puts it at a little bit above a mid flex. Definitely something that you could put on just about everybody. If you're looking to hit a ton of park, you could ride this. You're looking for a little bit of free ride and you're a lighter dude, you could ride this. General purpose all mountain, this is a good go-to. So this is kind of your curious about Flow and you don't want to buy the low end stuff. This is that perfect flex that's going to match to just about anything. The overall ride feel with the fuse is really dictated by two things in my opinion. Number one is going to be the power triangle that Flow calls it, and that is the case with every Flow, and that's their cable that runs from the top of the high back down into the frame. It creates by far the quickest toe-to-heel response out of anything out there, and you can argue with me on that all you want, but I've ridden pretty much every binding you can possibly think of, and these move quicker toe-to-heel than pretty much anything else I've ever been in. And especially at this price. You put this up against any other binding in this price, and this is going to move quicker toe to heel, and that's just the nature of that cable. So as long as they're set up correctly, and that's key, because if they're not, they're going to feel sloppy. So as long as they're set up correctly, faster toe to heel than anything else out there. The second thing that really dictates the feel, in my opinion, is the footbeds. Now, Flow just calls it an EVA, and that's not necessarily wrong, but I think a little bit more detail should be put into that description, because you go and feel this EVA versus anyone else's EVA in the entire industry. The ones on the Fuse, specifically, because the NX2 series stuff is even a little different, feels different. A little bit more of that rubberized EVA. Think like your Crocs, basically. So it has a higher rebound factor to it, and it rides like that. So it rides very lively underfoot, but at the same time, really soaks up vibrations pretty well and soaks up big drops really well. The downside to it is because they are full canned footbed, if you don't really like canning, you can't really compress out of it. So a lot of really standard EVAs out there, like what the rest of the industry is using, you put a pressure on it and that EVA just kind of compresses and stays compressed. This rebounds. So the second you kind of get any compression in it, it wants to snap back out of it. It does provide that really lively feel like I was talking about, but it means that if you're not a huge fan of canning, it's not really going to go away. Flow pretty much markets the Fuse as your catch-all binding. It is the binding that they basically say anyone can get in it, and I generally agree. And then the hybrid strap style is for that guy that just likes that toe cap feel or just isn't quite ready for that feel of the Fusion strap. The Fuse hybrid is certainly my pick for somebody that's curious about Flow, but they're also terrified for some strange reason. It's going to feel the most like a regular binding because it has that hybrid strap, it has the most accessible price point, and I think it provides the most kind of catch-all feel to it. So if I was, riding Flow a lot more, I don't ride it as nearly as much as I used to. I still ride them though. The Fuse hybrid is honestly one of the ones that I would probably go to for my everyday stuff. Certain categories of boards that I've got out there, I'd have a couple different picks of stuff out there, but if I had to pick one Flow binding out of the entire lineup to ride for myself, it would probably be these. Thanks for watching. I've been your host Kevin, and this has been my review of the Flow Fuse with the hybrid strap. What did you think? Has this been a binding you've been riding forever? Are you excited about the new one-piece highback? Let's have a conversation about it. While you're doing that, make sure you click the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get notifications when we've got these videos coming out. If you're interested in supporting us, the best way to do that is to check out Angry Snowboarder VIP. I could tell you a little more, but we already made a video for that. Come back and check me in the next video.